Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Sawtooth Tactical, and with so many new suppressor owners lately, because of the shorter wait times obviously, I figured it would be good to do a series of videos answering some questions that people getting into suppressors might have. And this video specifically is going to focus on your mounting system, whether you go with a QD system or direct thread, and which QD system, because they all have their pros and cons. Now, I don't have experience with every single mounting system out there, but a lot of them have the same kind of ideas, and I have experience with quite a few of them. And so we are going to talk about that today. If that's interesting to you, make sure you're subscribed, and let's begin. When it comes to suppressing your firearm, there are a few different ways that you can mount a can on a gun. And we're specifically going to be talking about rifle suppressors today, not pistol suppressors, because that is a whole different topic. So with rifle suppressors, you can go like this, very simple. This is direct thread, right on the barrel to the shoulder. It just literally threads on, and it threads off if I want to take it off. But many, or most, or all suppressor manufacturers pretty much these days are either offering their own QD system, like this is the Rearin or the Plan B system right here, or they are hub compatible. Now, hub compatible basically stands for a specific thread pitch, and it means that you can really use any mount that you want at that point. If it has the industry standard thread pitch, you can use like this. This is the Rearin system. You can use this Silencer Co. ASR system. Both of these suppressors are hub compatible, and that'll work with the dead Air Chemo system. It'll work with just about anything if it's hub compatible. And then there are suppressor companies like HSW Works, that have their own mounting system that is totally not hub compatible, but it is a QD mounting system. And when I say QD, that's a little bit of a misnomer when it comes to suppressors, because while they can be quick detach when they're cold, suppressors are kind of more like quick attach, not quick detach, because these systems get them onto your rifle very quickly and easily. But when you've put a bunch of mags through a suppressor, it gets extremely hot. And getting it off of your gun, no matter what kind of mounting system you're using, can sometimes be a bit of an issue. And the reason for that is twofold. For one, you don't want to grab a hot suppressor, and so then you have to use something to protect your hand from the hot suppressor. But also, when it's hot, metal does things when it comes to heat. It expands when it's hot. And so, depending what your mounting system is, it might be really difficult to get it off, even if you can get a hold of the thing. So, I like to think of them more as quick attach rather than quick detach. Although, when they're cold, like they are now, they are also quick detach. I'd like to thank Aura, which is the sponsor of this video. You know, firearms can protect you and your family and your household from a lot of threats and provide you with a certain amount of security. Well, Aura can provide you with security from the things that you don't see and protect you from those threats. I've been using it for a few months now. When I first got it, I Googled my name and there was a lot of stuff that came up. And then I signed up with Aura and I watched as they took each and every one of those things off of the internet, so that my information wasn't out there anymore. They do a lot of things, including identity and credit monitoring, password manager, antivirus protection. They have a VPN, home title monitoring, and then the big one is data broker removal. As you guys probably already know, scammers are a huge part of life now, which really sucks. But the way that they get your information is from data brokers. And Aura goes out there and they find those data brokers that have your information and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf, removing your information off the internet so that scammers don't have access to you anymore. The big thing that it's helped me with is I don't get spam calls anymore, and I've noticed that over these last few months that I've been using it. I just have stopped getting spam calls. If you want to support this channel, Sawtooth Tactical, the best way to do that is to sign up for Aura. You get 2 weeks free if you use my link, which is aura.com/sawtooth-tactical, and then it's only $12 a month for all of those things that I listed earlier. I really appreciate what Aura has done for the channel, and I appreciate that they sponsor firearms-related channels. It says a lot to me about who they are. I value my privacy, and I also value yours. And one of the biggest things about suppressor mounting is you want to make sure that your suppressor stays concentric with the bore of your barrel. And I mean, most good mounting systems out there are going to do that for you. I've never had a baffle strike with any of my cans, but a lot of people have. And there is one mounting system out there that does seem to be giving people a lot of problems right now. But the first one that we want to talk about is going to be direct thread, because it's the simplest one. So direct thread, the suppressor literally just threads onto your barrel. And really, when you look at a lot of these QD systems or quick attach systems, I mean, they just have threads as well, but it's a separate set of threads. And so why would you choose something like that over, direct thread? Well, for one, you saw how long it just took me to unthread that. The threads on your barrel are pretty fine. And so, it does just take longer to thread a suppressor on and off with your standard barrel threads. But the pro of this, well, the few pros of it, for one, it's going to be overall shorter. It's not going to take up as much length as adding, a mounting system there, because the suppressor just goes right on your barrel. So if you are trying to keep something extremely short, well, then maybe direct thread is for you. Another reason you might want direct thread is if you're getting a suppressor that is specifically for a specific gun. Like this suppressor lives on this 300 Blackout Shorty. I don't plan to put it on any other guns. And so going direct thread for this one made perfectly fine sense to me. Although what I've learned is that I do take it off of here more often than I thought I would. Mainly when I clean the gun, I take the suppressor off. It's easier to get a bore snake through it and pull it out without a can on the end. And most rifle suppressors, you don't really need to maintain them as often as you need to maintain your actual gun. And so I don't clean the suppressor every time I clean the gun, meaning that this suppressor does come off of this thing kind of regularly, as long as I'm shooting it regularly. So one of those pros, it being short, but also you have less possible failure points. There's only one set of threads. This is very simple. You thread it on. As long as you've got it tight against the shoulder of your barrel, you shouldn't have any issues with it. You don't have anything that you need to, attach with thread locker to other systems. You just less failure points. And again, I said it's shorter already. But besides that, it really does kind of end up living on one gun now. Now, yes, if I had multiple guns with the same thread pitch, this one is 5/8 by 24, 300 Blackout, it's a 30 caliber barrel. I could, of course, unthread this, thread it on a different gun. But you do risk, possibly damaging your threads on your barrel doing that all the time. Stuff like that, because as you will see, the threads on most of these mounting systems are not as fine as the ones on your barrel. They're kind of beefier and just, less easily damaged, I would say. So, pros and cons. Now, why would you choose a mounting system then? Maybe for a gun that you're not planning on moving the suppressor around to different guns. Well, for one thing, maybe you don't know, and you will get more guns that you want to use that can on. This one is a 9mm can, and this one is using the Rearin system, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Rearin is the same as Plan B, originally developed by Q. But the Rearin system is basically just another set of threads. Now, there are pros and cons to this as well though. With this other set of threads, I'm not risking damaging my barrel threads when I put this on and off. You can replace a muzzle device easier than a barrel. But for two, this now can go on multiple firearms. 9mm and 5.56 both use the same thread pitch on their barrel. And a 5.56 is a smaller round, diameter-wise than 9mm. So if I wanted to, I could put a bunch of these Rearin QD mounts, these muzzle devices, on other 5.56 guns. If I get an MP5, which I plan to at some point, I could put it on that. Although I might use a tri-lug for an MP5 just to do it the right way. But still, point standing, this kind of future-proofs this system to where if I do get more guns that I want to use this can on, I just put more muzzle devices on them, and then I can easily take it off of one and put it on the other. Now it does add a little bit of length to this gun. So this and my 300 Blackout have the same barrel length, very, very similar guns, but as you can see, if I put the stock at the same spot, the 9mm is a little longer. And that added length literally just comes from this suppressor mounting system. But is that a bad thing? This is already a very compact suppressor, so it only adds that much, probably about an inch to it. And one thing about that is your muzzle device, in this case, muzzle brake that's underneath here, well, that can act as a sacrificial baffle, protecting the blast chamber and the blast baffle of my suppressor. Again, easier to replace a muzzle device than a suppressor. And it also gives me a little bit more volume in here. This can seems to be a little bit quieter than this one, even though the can themselves are technically the exact same size. They're both whip machine and tool suppressors. Now, of course, we are kind of comparing apples to oranges here, as one of them is suppressing 9mm and the other is suppressing 300 Blackout, pistol round to a rifle round. Now, the Rearin system is very good at keeping your suppressor concentric to your bore because it is tapered, and so when you thread it down onto it, that tapered lock design makes sure that it basically stops in the same place every time, and that your suppressor isn't going to be canted to one side. You're not going to get a baffle strike, ruining your expensive suppressor. That is a good thing. So now I want to talk about another one here. This is the Silencer Co. ASR system. And this one is a little bit more complicated. So instead of just a second set of threads and threading on, this one actually has a locking collar. So when I unlock that locking collar, now it can thread off. And as you see, the threads on the ASR system are much less fine. They're much more coarse than the threads on my barrel. Now this one, no matter what, I was going to go with a mounting system for a couple reasons. For one, this rifle has a 14.5-inch barrel, so I had to pin and weld a muzzle device to get to that 16 inches. But for two, I have multiple guns chambered in 5.56, and so this allows me to easily move this suppressor from one to another extremely easily, just by having more ASR mounting brakes, basically. That one has a 3-prong flash hider. I got a couple of these brakes for these other two guns, and again, it threads on, locking collar, and that thing is totally solid. And that locking collar bites down on part of the muzzle device here so that it cannot back off while you're shooting. And it seems to be a very good system as well. It was highly recommended to me by the owner of my local gun store when I was first looking into all this, and I didn't really know which system I wanted to go with yet. And I'm really glad he pointed me in this direction. So I was actually trying to decide between the ASR system and the dead air chemo system, and he pointed me away from the dead air system, and I'm really glad he did. And I don't want to talk shit about dead air or their chemo mounting system, but being that I'm in some of these Facebook gun groups, specifically the Male Team 6 group, which those guys, it's a mid-tier or better group, and so they all have very nice gear, meaning a lot of them have suppressors. Well, a lot of them, including the guy that started and runs the group, have used the dead air chemo system with, unfortunately, devastating results. And I'm not saying that'll happen for everybody. I mean, it wouldn't be such a widely used system if it didn't work well for most people. But it does seem like a lot of people have gotten baffle strikes with it. That is one system that I don't have personal experience with. So I'm not 100% sure why, but I think part of it is that it doesn't thread down. It's got like a system where you put it in and turn it and lock it, which is kind of similar to 3-lug on an MP5, and that system seems to work great. So again, don't get mad at me if you do have dead air chemo. I'm sure the vast majority of people that have it have no issues with it. But that's not really the point. The point is that I think that the Silencer Co. ASR system is a great system. And again, with something like this brake here, this will act as a sacrificial baffle, helping to prolong the life of your suppressor. Now, the 3-prong flash hider won't really do that, but when I first built this rifle, I waited a long time for the suppressor, and I didn't want to break on this gun. I wanted a flash hider, so it is what it is. But that's one of the other great things about having one of these mounting systems, is you can put different muzzle devices on different guns as long as they have the same mounting system, and you can use the suppressor on all of them. This suppressor will go on both of these two guns and this one, basically any time that I take them out at this point, and I can easily use this can on all of those guns. It's not just stuck on one firearm. And that's one of the biggest advantages of using one of these quick attach systems. Now again, having one of these systems can, it does introduce more complicated points to your suppressor system, meaning that there can be more failure points. Besides just threading on, now the can actually threads onto the mount, which threads onto a muzzle device, which threads onto a barrel. So that is 1, 2, 3 points that are threading this can onto this barrel, rather than just one with direct thread. And so a lot of people go for direct thread for that reason. It's simple. Keep it simple, stupid. You have less things that can possibly go wrong. But as long as you mount your mount correctly to your suppressor and your muzzle device correctly to your barrel, you should be able to avoid most problems. And not all mounting systems are going to have so many points like that. So HUXWorks, for instance, I have shot the HUXWorks Flow 556K quite a bit on this gun. Now, I don't have it in front of me right now because it is a friend of mine's that he let me use that can to make some videos a while back. And we went out with it, and it's a great system. So the HUXWorks system, your muzzle device threads on just like normal. Well, the threads for the can are actually reverse thread. And then the HUXWorks can itself, it's a 3D printed flow through design. The way that the pressurized gases flow through the can, they actually, every time you fire around, that pressure actually helps to tighten the suppressor onto your muzzle device. And when you go to take the suppressor off, you're not turning it the same direction as you would to unthread your muzzle device. So you basically avoid possibly, getting carbon lock and taking your muzzle device off with the suppressor by accident. I think that that's a very good system. And, Griffin Armament has their taper lock system, or dual lock, I think they call it. There are a lot of good systems out there. So do your research. But I did do my research before I got some of my new suppressors here. And again, I got from some people that I really respect their knowledge and experience. Highly recommended the Silencer Co. ASR system. And so I went with that from my 556 suppressors. But I've also been seeing more and more lately from people that really know what they're talking about, people that shoot a lot and have a lot of nice guns. The Rearin or Plan B system seems to be the most well-trusted suppressor mounting system out there right now. A lot of people that are really into this seem to be switching all their stuff over to this Rearin system. And I can see why. It's very simple and is designed well. Like I said, so you have a taper, and so when this thing threads down, it's almost impossible for it not to be perfectly straight. And that's a good thing. That's one of the issues that you can have using a suppressor mounting system, is not having concentricity to your bore. And then you get a baffle strike, and then your expensive suppressor is either ruined or it's sent in for warranty work and you're waiting for it. And it's a big hassle. Replacing or repairing a suppressor is not the same, because it's an NFA item, as replacing or repairing other gun parts. And so you want to avoid those kind of problems as much as possible. And so make sure you go with a system that really works. But at the same time, I've used a bunch of them. These ones in front of me, the HUXWorks one, as well as another one, and I can't think of the name of the company right now, but it was another suppressor that same friend let me use to make some videos. It was a big 30 cal suppressor, and they had their own proprietary system, and it worked great. I threaded the, muzzle device onto my 300 blackout, threaded the thing on, and went blasting. Never had any issues with it. So honestly, I think that most of these systems are pretty good. They put a lot of research and development into this stuff, because the manufacturers don't want you to ruin your suppressor with a baffle strike either. And so they do want to make sure that what they put out there is going to work for the most part. Quality control is important with any gun part, but again, especially with NFA items, because of the hassle that you have to go through if it comes to sending it in for warranty work, for repair or replacement. That is not something that you want to deal with, and it's not something that the manufacturer wants to deal with. So when it really comes down to it, I can't necessarily recommend one way versus another. There are, like I said, lots of pros and cons to each. And so you have to make that decision for yourself. But are you going to possibly in the future use your new suppressor on more than one firearm? If you are, then you probably want one of these mounting systems. And so figure out if you want one that just threads on with a taper, if you want one with some kind of a locking collar. Surefire has their own system that is very good, although it's also kind of famous for getting carbon lock. Now, carbon lock is when your suppressor gets locked onto your muzzle device with carbon from shooting it a lot, and then you can't get it off. And Surefire literally recommends that you just shoot it off. You loosen the locking collar and you fire around through that thing, and your suppressor goes flying down range. That's actually how they say to get it off if it's carbon locked. And it does work. But do you really want to shoot your suppressor down range? Up to you. Surefire makes great suppressors. The RC2 has been like an industry standard for a long time, and now they have the RC3, which is a flow-through can, which is the hot new thing, obviously, right? So none of my cans are flow-through cans, and that doesn't seem to bother me. I have used that HUXWorks can a lot though, and the flow-through technology is very nice. I definitely noticed gas back to my face a lot more with this Polonium K than I did with the Flow 556K. But at the same time, this one's also a lot quieter, more effective at suppression. But again, that's not what this video is about. It's about mounting systems. So maybe you're just going to keep one suppressor on one gun. Maybe direct thread is the way you want to go then. You have less possible failure points, and you can keep your overall length shorter. But again, having that break as a sacrificial baffle and just being able to easily mount and remove your suppressor, move it between multiple firearms, that is nice. Modularity is a good thing in firearms, and a suppressor mounting system is the definition of modularity. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think and what you use. You can help other viewers that are just getting into this. Do you believe in direct mount? Because a lot of people, that is just the way they go. And even if your suppressor is hub compatible, something like this, you can just get a hub compatible direct mount, and you can get it for multiple thread pitches. You can get a 30 cal can and get a direct thread, adapter for 5/8 by 24. And then you could take that out and you could put an adapter in for 1/2 by 28 for your 5.56 guns and put a 5.56 end cap on it. And so you can still, even with direct thread, run the same suppressor on multiple guns. It's just going to take a little bit more work on your part, be a little bit more complicated than just, take it off the QD and stick it on another one. Convenience is a nice thing. And as long as you have a good mounting system, you shouldn't have any issues doing that. Check concentricity on every gun that you're going to put that suppressor on, though. Just because it's concentric on one doesn't mean you won't get a baffle strike on another one. Now, you don't necessarily need an alignment rod, although I think that's definitely a smart thing to do, but I don't own any alignment rods. I have checked alignment with things that were not actually alignment rods. I don't know how accurate they really were, but honestly, what I do, I take the upper off my gun, I take the charging handle and the bolt carrier out, and I look down the bore with the suppressor attached. And if I don't see any suppressor, occluding that hole at the end of the tunnel, then I assume I'm good to go. And I haven't been wrong yet. I haven't gotten a baffle strike on any of these suppressors yet, or any other ones that I've used. So we will see though. This one I've only ran on this gun so far. I've only had it a few weeks, but I will be running it on this one as well as this one very soon. And I am going to check by looking down the barrel first, make sure that everything looks good. And as long as it does, I'm going to send it, because that's what we do here on Sawtooth Tactical. So again, let me know down in the comments. Do you use direct thread? Do you use a mounting system? Which mounting system do you use? And do you recommend it, or have you had issues with it? I would love to know. The viewers would love to know. Other than that, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Please share this video. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.